welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Allie.
And I'm Sara. We're so excited about today. So much to talk about. Honestly, a lot of news to cover across the board. NWSL, Europe, WSL, everything. And somehow it all feels very connected, very related. But before we get into the episode, we are very excited to announce that if you saw an episode drop on Monday, it's because our Olympic coverage has officially started. Woo!
Whoop, whoop. It's peak fever now.
Allie, you want to tell the people what we are doing here for Olympic coverage or lead up to the Olympics?
That's right. So lead up, we are going to be covering each team in each group. We're going to be going into the players that will be on that plane to Paris, how we think the groups are going to play out, and all of that good stuff. We're going to give you extra preview episodes where we do our predictions, because we know you love those, to see whether we're right or wrong about who's going to win, who's going to come out of the groups, golden boot, golden glove, all of that fun stuff.
Spoiler alert, we're always right about that stuff. Always. No, if you listen to our World Cup coverage, you probably saw this. We're doing the same thing that we did for the World Cup because it worked so well. We got such great feedback from all of you about it. So there's 3 groups, just 3 in the Olympics. So we're going to have 3 episodes. They're going to drop every Monday starting this past week. And each Monday you'll get a different preview of a different group. And then that 4th and final episode is going to drop Monday, the 22nd, which is just 3 days before the tournament officially kicks off. And that 4th episode is going to be, all of our predictions, golden boot, everything. We're going to combine all of those 3 group previews that we did in the past 3 weeks and really dig into it, pick our tournament winners, and get into the arguments about it, because that's what's fun. Olympic coverage for us is going to be very similar to what you're used to, and we'll get more into that as we drop each episode. But for now, stay tuned for the lead up to the Olympics, our previews coverage, if you will, every Monday.
Yes, but speaking of Olympics, we have some hot breaking news that is coming out of the Germany national team camp. It's very important. It's very serious. The German national team have officially decided what their new mascot's going to be, and it is going to be it's going to be an otter. Now, the otter doesn't have a name yet, but it's going to be an otter, and of course it's going to be crocheted by Clara Ball, who obviously had so much success the last tournament round with Wawu, and we were all on Wawu watch, and we were
my
obsessed.
gosh.
And so it's going to be a little otter in what looks like dungarees. It's going to be adorable. And so,
do we have a reason for why it's an otter? I don't associate Paris or the Olympics with an otter.
I think it's just cute. So we're going to be focused on that. And that is going to be, as soon as we know more, as soon as we know the name, we will let you know.
Listen, the biggest disappointment of Germany going out so early in the World Cup was that we didn't get more of Waru. So
exactly.
Perhaps people will be pulling for Germany just so we can get more mascot content, because it just gets better and better.
So we are going to start off with the NWSL, because that is where all the big news truly came out these couple of days. So of course, the biggest news that we have to kick off with is all of the firings and resignations that seem to be coming out of management. We sat down and recorded just as the Casey Stoney news was breaking, and you got our
Allie, I don't even know what we said, honestly. You like those were our raw, honest, fully unfiltered, processing in real time feelings right there.
Absolutely. So we broke that. And then the next day, on Tuesday, Bay FC announced that their GM, Lucy Rushton, has resigned and is to be replaced. And then just when you think you've got it all covered, on Sunday, Utah announced that their head coach, Amy Rodriguez, has been let go, which the timing seems shocking, since they managed to hold Portland to a draw and had one of their best performances they've had in the league so far. So we're going to get right into this, and let's start with the one that we need to cover a little bit more because more information has come out, which is Casey Stoney being let go from San Diego.
Yeah, I think you said it perfectly. These were all shocking. Casey Stoney shocked everybody. Lucy Rushton shocked everybody. And Amy Rodriguez shocked everybody. And I think a lot of people made the same point you just did about how Utah had actually just come off arguably their best performance of the whole season. So like you said, let's get into all of it. Casey Stoney first, as you just mentioned, because yeah, when we talked about it, news had broken just then. And a lot has transpired in the past week. And I can't believe it's only been a week. This still feels like pretty fresh news. And it's because little by little, more and more starts to come out. San Diego Wave held a press conference. Jill Ellis, president at San Diego Wave, and of course, former U.S. Women's National Team head coach, said many, many things in the press conference. And I think most notably, it's that, number one, the new GM of San Diego Wave that was just hired was not involved in the Stoney firing, according to Jill Ellis. Now, a lot of people have kind of raised that flag and said, that's suspicious, but that is what Jill Ellis said, so we'll take that we have to take it at face value for now, and then we'll move forward. And she also said that the decision was based on data and the team's recent run of poor form. Listen, there's a lot to say about this, and I don't think we want to repeat what we said last week. If you want to get into the initial reactions around why this doesn't make sense, go back to last week's episode and dig into that. Frankly, what Jill Ellis said, in my eyes, doesn't shed a lot more light. And what's worth digging into is actually not Jill Ellis's comments since this, but the soccer community's reaction to it. And the fact that it's clear that everyone was so equally shocked by this, including Casey Stoney, who actually just on Monday, so a week after the firing, finally was able to release a statement of her own. Utterly heartbreaking and very long. We can't read the whole thing, but just heartbreaking. And along with this, many former players, notably Heather O'Reilly, posted a lot of comments just along these same lines. I'll quote Heather O'Reilly here. She said, quote, "Without knowing any of the details of conversations that went into this seems very harsh to a coach that won the league last year and already run a trophy this year." She then goes on to say, "Well done, Casey Stoney. Man, this industry is ruthless sometimes." And I guess we'll pause there because I think you're always on the wrong side when former players also don't understand the decision.
It doesn't make sense. And we talked about it last week, but it just doesn't make sense because, as I said to you guys when like the ARod news came out and things like that, you guys don't have relegation. You guys, the same teams, granted it affects where you get placed in the draft, but your teams are the same teams until expansion every year. So why are you not giving people time to bed in? That's what I don't understand. And yeah, it's not been the greatest start for San Diego, but you're not that badly off. You're still within playoff chances. You're still, you may not finish top this year, but look what Gotham did last year. They squeaked in and won. So it just makes no sense to me.
I agree. And this is partly also what we talked about last week. Like, give her more time. She's done so much already for a club that I think everybody needs to be reminded this is only the third year in the league for San Diego Wave. And you nailed it, that this is the through line with Amy Rodriguez too, where people didn't understand why it's so abrupt. A brand new team halfway through the season. It doesn't make sense. But before we move on to ARod, I also want to add this component that, look, I think the most frustrating piece is that Casey Stoney, or at least I'll speak for myself, Casey Stoney is one of the few coaches, if not the only, honestly, that I can think of right now, that was very clearly trusted by players, by all accounts that we know. She not only wasn't harmful to players, but also went out of her way to protect all players, not just San Diego Wave players, all players. And to fire a coach like that, not only period, but like also in the state of the NWSL still, plus when you had the layer that the president of this organization, Jill Ellis, let's just be really frank here, her name has been involved in a lot of things that have come out around how she was either involved with abusive coaches, keeping their job, or it could be argued that she turned a blind eye to the abuse that was going on in the NWSL, and at the same time forced national team players to play in the NWSL where that abuse was rampant. There's a lot of issues here, and it's a lot deeper than stats and data, which is what Jill Ellis referenced in the reason for firing Casey Stoney. And we have to look at the whole comprehensive picture of what a head coach brings. And I think, frankly, the argument folds on itself when you only reference stats and data because of how successful Casey Stoney has been, but it also is more than that. And I think that's just what's been most disappointing to me in the aftermath.
I think there's more to this story. I think there's going to be more coming out. It feels more like that there was a mass falling out. And this is my speculation, but it feels like to me that there was a falling out between Stoney and the head honchos at Wave, because their reasoning makes no sense.
Well, I think that's a through line for what we're also going to talk about next, which is the Amy Rodriguez firing and Lucy Rushton resigning. Both of those super abrupt. Both of those, we don't have a lot of information, and they don't make sense. There is a lot more to all three of these stories, and where there's smoke, there's fire, and that can't be a good thing. So let's move into the ARod situation, because this is the most recent to date. ARod, the inaugural head coach of the Utah Royals, was most recently let go, like Allie just said, right after the team's arguably best performance versus Portland. Amy Rodriguez has yet to comment herself. This was her first head coaching gig. She'd come off some time as an assistant coach at USC. And this is, listen, there's just so much to say here. The Utah statement, Allie, is it even worth reading?
Not particularly, because it's basically just it's a rehashing of what Jill Ellis said about Casey Stoney. That basically that they appreciate her efforts and that they need to focus and compete on the highest levels, and they don't think that Amy can bring that for them. Yeah,
Amy Rodriguez wasn't the only person let go in this. There is a firing of 2 or 3 coaches altogether, and newly appointed assistant coach Jimmy Conrads, who, by the way, only joined the Royals in early June. That's right, less than a month before he was appointed head coach, is now the interim head coach. There's not a lot to say about his experience other than it's certainly not greater than what ARod had as experience. So the reason for him being selected is also a question mark. And I'll tie this back to Casey Stoney right now, where I'll say both women head coaches that were fired were replaced by interim male head coaches that don't seem to have a lot of experience.
And we will leave that unsaid.
Yeah, and I think the final, there's not more to say about this, partly because we just don't have a lot more information. But I think the final piece is just to make this about Utah, which was a team that was in utter turmoil when it fully folded, or technically moved to Kansas City. And they were supposed to come into this league again as a new expansion team, a new club with a new image, new everything. And frankly, they've just come in the same mess that they left the league as. And to be totally frank, this is such an oversight on behalf of the people who run this organization, because your biggest problem right now is not your head coach. It's not even your on-field product. This is a season where Utah has been criticized more for what is on the front of their jersey for their biggest sponsor, which is a bigoted organization, frankly, than their on-field performances. So I think that's what needs to be fixed more than, 14 games in half of your inaugural season where this team had to build based on an expansion draft, which is hard to do. I just think that their priorities are completely out of whack, and I don't expect this team to do well based on the little that we've seen of how it's being run.
No. And you can bring in as many, international brilliant players such as Henri, it's still not going to do you much good.
Well, you can't, because nobody's going to want to go there. They're just going to keep going down and down. All right, finally, let's talk Bay FC and Lucy Rushton. For those of you who aren't familiar with that name, Lucy Rushton was the inaugural GM of Bay FC. She was hired to build this squad along with a few other people who she hired to work with her, and they did an absolutely fantastic job. her resigning, not being fired, abruptly resigning, crazy, raises a lot of red flags.
So unlike ARod, Lucy has issued a statement. It's really not really worth reading the whole thing, but it's essentially a very similar sentiment, which is that, grateful for the experience, what they meant to do, and it's been a privilege and an honour, but she's had to step away for reasons and is looking forward to the next chapter. Again, it says so little and so much at the same time about the relationship. I think the biggest thing that we need to mention is the fact that Matt Potter was hired as a technical director at BFC in December. This was kept super quiet from the women's soccer world. If you don't remember who Matt Potter was, he was fired abruptly from Kansas City ahead of a midweek game in 2023 for issues around his leadership and employment responsibilities.
Yeah, still question marks about that. Like, I remember that happening because Matt Potter took Kansas City to the NWSL championship in 2022. And then the following season just abruptly let go when it looked like he was building something good. And obviously that's never usually a good sign. And it's never usually a good sign when a team that keeps your hiring pretty under wraps as well. And the fact that he's taking over as interim GM now, a pretty high up position at BFC. Look, this is all just weird. This is all weird. We don't have a lot of information.
No, we will keep you updated as and when we know things. But yeah, it's just been a spate in a week.
Yeah, I feel like we talk about a lot, Allie, when, especially, frankly, we rarely talk about it when it comes to NWSL, but especially in the WSL, we talk about how we think that clubs increasingly so are too quick to pull the trigger on head coaches. And I do think that's something that we've seen a lot in the WSL. And we haven't seen that as much here in the NWSL until this year. Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I think has yet to be determined, because in the long run, that could end up being net positive, because that could mean that organizations are quicker to pull the trigger and fire a coach that is toxic. But right now, it's just weird.
Staying in the NWSL, this weekend is the match we have all been waiting for. Little did we know at the beginning of the season this would be the matchup, but here we are. Kansas City takes on Orlando. It is undefeated versus undefeated. We said months ago that this could possibly happen, but we didn't think it was going to. We honestly thought one of these teams would fall by now, but they have just proved us time and time again how strong they actually are. So this Saturday is the game. It is the game.
Yeah, it is wild to have, through 15 games, two undefeated teams with exactly the same record, 10 wins, 5 draws, no losses. I'm so excited for this. This feels like a playoff game. It just does. Yeah, we circled this months ago, but here we are. Can't believe it's happening. Saturday, July 6th, 4:30 Pacific time, 7:30 Eastern time. For those of you in the UK, it kicks off at 30 minutes past midnight, but it's a Saturday. So I think it's worth maybe staying up for, Allie. And if you're wondering where you can watch it internationally, NWSL Plus, all the information right here. So you've no excuse for not doing it. But let's get into it, because we want to preview this game, because this is a big deal. I don't think this has ever happened before in the NWSL, where we have two teams sitting at 15 games into the season undefeated. Now, Kansas City is going to host this game. This will be their second game in a row at home. And on the flip side, Orlando, they will be away for the second game in a row. They went to LA this past weekend, and now they'll be on the road at Kansas City. And this is the final game before the Olympic break as well. So it really feels like a culmination of everything. Oh my gosh, I'm just so excited. Kansas City right now, technically sitting in the number 1 spot, but it's only because they have more goals for, because not only are these teams even on points, they are also even on goal differential, which is the first tiebreaker. It's just everything. It has everything. So, like I said, we want to preview this game because I don't even need to give any more reasons. We're so excited. So let's do it, Allie. Let's preview this big matchup.
Yeah, so this is the first head-to-head for these teams all season. Kansas City are coming off of a 2-0 win over Houston. And before that, they won the massive 4-1 win over Portland. Orlando are coming off of a 3-0 win against Angel City. And then the weekend before that was that huge win against Utah of 6-0. So what are we going to expect here? Because obviously Kansas City have been at home for the last week and it will be their second home game. Orlando on the road for 2 games. Do we expect this is going to be a cagey game where it might be, a 0-0, a 1-1? Or are we expecting one team to absolutely go for it and we're looking at a high-scoring madness?
I'm thinking that the one thing we can all expect from this game is that it should be an utter goal fest. Both teams lead the league in goals scored. Kansas City with 39, Orlando with 30 on the season. That's Orlando averages at least 2 goals a game, Kansas City at least more than 2 goals a game. So we have to assume it will be a goal fest. For me, this is tricky. I think it's a distinct possibility that we see a draw in this game, which I think for United States-based fans might leave them a little disappointed. But I'm just going to plead to you, if you do feel like that will be a disappointment. I promise you it won't be, because I do think that if this is a draw, it's going to be a straight up NWSL after dark, chaotic, like 3-3 draw, something wild like that. But for the sake of digging into this and picking who I think could come out on top, if there will be a winner, I think that I'm going to go out on a limb and say I think it will be Orlando. The obvious answer is to say Kansas City because they have home field advantage, and that stadium has become a bit of a fortress and hard for opposing teams to go into. But here's why I think Orlando can edge this out, and it's quite simply because Orlando have allowed the fewest goals on the season in the entire league, allowed 11 goals over the course of 15 games. On the flip side, Kansas City allowed 20 goals in 15 games. 6 teams have allowed the same or fewer goals in Kansas City, so that's not an outstanding defensive performance for the first half of this season. And from that, I think you just have to draw. Kansas City aren't quite as strong defensively as Orlando are. I think that because they are both goal-scoring threats and Orlando has the edge defensively, I give it to Orlando.
Interesting. I mean, I think I would like Orlando out of the 2 teams to take it. I mean, when you've got Banda and Marta up front, that's a scary proposition for any team to face. I think Kansas is going to give them such a good game. This is the thing. I do feel like this game, I'd be so disappointed if it was a 0-0. I don't think it will be, but if they were both so cagey and just didn't both absolutely go for it, because obviously it means that they have a stronger shot of winning the league. I do think Orlando will edge it, but only just because, like you said, I think it'll be something crazy like a 3-2, a 4-3, and it's going to be just back and forth between the 2 teams.
I expected you to take Kansas City, I'm not going to lie.
There is part of me, I don't know, again, it's a head and heart thing. I think in my heart, I want it to be Orlando. My head says Kansas City. So I'm going to meet in the middle. There we go.
All right, well, we will see Saturday.
So, for regular listeners, next week we will be covering this game in depth to see the highs and lows, but that will be our last regular episode until after the Olympics. But fret not, because as we alluded to at the top of the show, we have so much Olympic coverage coming at you. You will not miss us, don't worry.
Let's go around the world. Around the world, around the world.
To Italy, and Serie A will expand to 12 teams in the 2025-2026 season. Currently, the league has 10 teams, so this will be an expansion of 2 teams. This comes on the heels of the announcement out of Germany that the Bundesliga will also expand from 12 to 14 teams in the 2025-2026 season. With the expansion going on around in Europe, will the WSL finally expand further?
And finally, to the United States for the USL Super League. The USL Super League, the new Division 1 professional league in the United States, will kick off its inaugural season on August 17th. That's less than 2 months away. It was recently announced that all games will stream on Peacock in the United States. No information yet as to where it will stream internationally, but hopefully that is to come. This is a big win for the Super League to get programming on NBC, one of the few major networks that the NWSL is not partners with.
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides researched analysis on loads of football, including the women's game. Want all the stats in one place instead of drowning in a mountain of tabs? Want to explore key matchups and the tactics from both teams? Total Football Analysis provides the stats and analysis to help you learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO10 to get a full year for just €10. That's €40 of the yearly subscription. Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and type WOSO10 at checkout.
Over across the pond to England for, oh my goodness, something that probably makes my blood boil more than any other topic we will discuss today. News out of Manchester United that the women are being moved out of their training facility so that the men can take over that training facility. Now, I'm not privy to where the men were, but I do know that the women shouldn't be displaced just for the men. And it does seem that the women will now be in some form of a makeshift, call it what it is, crappy shithole facility until United figure everything out. And for the past month, we've been talking about how United clearly don't care about their women's team just based on their actions and their lack of care to re-sign any player, just effort that they're putting into this team when it comes to signings. And if we needed confirmation that that is correct, this is confirmation. This is utterly absurd, Allie.
Yeah, so basically what it is so Man United have a massive training complex called Carrington over here, and the men and women, they were so proud at the beginning of the season. They built this brand new complex for the women to train in as part of that massive training complex over at Carrington, because remember not Man United fans, not that long ago, that they were training in a public gym that was attached to the ground that they played at.
That's disgraceful.
Yeah, I remember my friend going to that gym and there was just Tobin Heath running on a treadmill. Because that was
and
just
people wonder why she didn't stay at Manchester United.
part of a rehab. But yeah, so they were there and then they've moved on, and then they are now fixing the men's side of this training complex. But instead of making the men go into the temporary accommodation while they fix it, they've put the men in the brand new training complex that they built for the women, and the women are now in porter cabins, which is temporary accommodation until it's fixed, and who knows how long that's going to be.
I don't even know what to say about this. It's just like, it's absolutely enraging. I'm trying my best not to swear right now. That's how mad I am. How do I explain something that if you don't feel automatically enraged by hearing this, is it worth me even explaining why it should be enraging to you? I don't think so. This is utterly absurd that this is happening. Period. The end. This is the most blatantly disrespectful show of I don't give a flying F about the women's team that I have seen in a long time. And that is saying something. Oh my goodness. And on top of that, you want to talk about Manchester United competing in the WSL, forget about it. I've seen a ton of things going around social media. Everybody's saying, look, I think that all players have a reason for leaving Manchester United now. 100% agree with that. If you are deciding whether you should create a new contract, renew a contract, whatever, if you have the option to stay at Manchester United or not, why in the world would you stay there?
Which leads us on to the big thing, which is that there are stories coming out about how agents are telling their players, don't move to Man United. It's not a smart move for them to go, because it seems to me that, and please don't hate me, Man United fans, but it seems to me that there was a lot of success in getting players at Manchester United because of the name. Because Manchester United is a big name in football. It is a big name in international football because of what Sir Alex Ferguson did and the years of success that they had, and that they were one of the first teams, definitely the first English team to win the treble, which was, FA Cup, League and Champions League. And so they were a massive name in football. So that's how they got a lot of these brilliant players. It's now starting to come unstuck because you know what? You're not the newbies anymore. You've been in this game now for 4 or 5 years. You're coming up to your 6th year now.
Yeah, time to start to show some results on the women's side.
Exactly.
And you're not.
And you're not. And the problem is now is that people aren't just going to be going there starry-eyed under the name of Man United anymore. So you're going to lose, and you have lost, and we'll talk about who's left in this past week, a lot of key players, and you're going to keep losing them because they're not going to put up with being shunted into a porter cabin.
Well, let's talk about that because obviously most recently, Mary Earps, finally the saga has come to a conclusion. Mary Earps is going to PSG. We knew she was leaving United. Now we have confirmation she's going to PSG. But Allie, we've also talked about how many players that are key to Manchester United were on the cusp. They could stay, they could go. Let's talk about other names other than Mary Earps.
So yeah, before we move on to the other players that they have unfortunately moved on, we do need to talk about Mary Earps' statement because I think that is a huge damning indictment. Because whereas when you see players leave, it's a lot of thank you for my time here, fans, you've been great, thank you for giving me the opportunity, I need to move on. Mary's statement was, the club is about to undergo a period of transition, and unfortunately, I don't feel it aligns with the timing of where I am at in my career. Now if that is not a damning indictment, I don't know what is, because yes, she thanked the fans. Yes, she's appreciated her time at Manchester United, but to come into that statement saying, you know what, you guys are not going to help me progress where I need to progress, so I'm out.
Yeah, and to say that they're entering a period of transition is essentially to say that this club will be down and out for a while, and it'll be a moment before they come back to competing at the top. And that's just simply not the place that I need to be right now for my career, is basically what she's saying. She's like, hey, I am in the prime of my career. I want to be at a place that's competing now. This isn't it.
Yeah, and obviously Lucia Garcia, who helped them win the FA Cup, is going off to Mexico. We believe they couldn't keep her there. And I think, to be honest, the biggest one for me is Katie Zellum, because as one of my friends pointed out, regardless of form, Katie Zellum gave up Champions League football to step down to the Women's Championship because she has a love for Man United and has been their captain and a fearless servant for them since their creation back. And for her to go says a lot, to be honest. It really does.
I agree. I feel like you really can't say more than what's said by Katie Zellum leaving Manchester United. That says it all. Unfortunately, I don't think this is the end of the saga. There's a lot more to come. There's a lot more in this offseason, and I don't think any of it is going to be positive for Manchester United. So we will keep everybody updated on where that's at, but not good news. And finally, we've got 2 more quick topics coming out of England. One is an update from last week. I'm going to say it right now. Not positive, but the last one that we're going to end on a positive here. We're going to lighten everybody's spirits because it's a really beautiful topic, and I'm so excited to discuss it. But first and foremost, we're going to pick up on Reading, because last week, Allie, we got everybody up to speed on what was going on with Reading. So what's the quick 2-second recap from last week, and then what is the update since then?
So the 2-second recap from last week is that it was looking like that Reading's men's team had announced that they couldn't afford to keep on the women's team, and they were hoping that a takeover might help save them. And it was about the results of that takeover, which we now have. So it got announced on Friday. Unfortunately, the takeover was not successful, and officially the women's team has removed itself from the championship. They will now move to the 5th tier in women's football, which means that they can go part-time. So they've not even gone into 4th tier. They've gone right down to the 5th tier, which is where they basically play local teams. It's a Southern League, and they will play teams that are...
This is a team that was in the WSL 2 years ago, is in the second division this year or last year, I guess, and now going immediately down to the 5th.
Yeah. The most shocking thing for me is two things. One is the players found out when it broke on social media. They found out
I hate when that happens.
through Tom Gary over at the Guardian, and they found that out. And then the second one, and the more disturbing one for me, is that all youth programs have been scrapped, and so that has left hundreds of young girls, young women who weren't quite old enough to make the seniors now without a team. They don't have one because going down to the 5th, they've decided that they can't afford a youth team, full stop. So all of the unders categories are gone. I wouldn't be surprised, Reading fans, now, if you're going to see a mass exodus, because there's going to be a lot of players that can't afford to go part-time, don't want to go part-time, don't want to have to try and find a second job and put in football. So they will be going to find championship teams in this transfer window. The other big thing is the championship now will have bye weeks because they have an odd number of teams, because it's too late for a team to get a license to go up to the championship. Why they couldn't just unrelegate one of the relegated teams, I don't know. But it's now going to be 11 teams in the championship instead of 12, so there will be bye weeks for different teams as things go on.
It's just unbelievable. I mean, the only thing I'll say about this is that this is why something like Title IX in the United States is so important. And England needs something like that. England is a country that has a history of literally banning women from playing soccer, and why there has not been a law enacted to protect women so that they can do something as simple as have an equal opportunity to play soccer, not just women, but youth, girls. It needs to happen, because this is only going to keep happening. It's incredibly upsetting. And again, sure, that saga is not over, but on to the positives, Allie, because there's been a lot of just not great news. So let's end on some good news, because we've been covering this team, the London City Lionesses. If you follow our Patreon, you've probably heard us do some news and tens about the London City Lionesses. And if you don't, and you've never heard of them, we're going to talk about them right now, because you should know about them, because you're about to start hearing about them a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So London City Lionesses, very quick brief history, were part of Millwall, and then they broke away when they felt that Millwall wasn't giving them the respect they deserved, and created their own team. As of the end of last year, they were bought out by Michelle Kang, who has owned many women's teams.
Still does.
Still does. I believe she's Lyon's owner. Washington Spirit did own Seattle, but since buying Washington Spirit, has relinquished ownership of Seattle because of conflict of interest and monopolies and all sorts, and has decided, very shockingly, was to buy the London City Lionesses. This is now huge. They did a press conference this week, and the first big thing is that they are moving away from their very small ground in Kent, and they are now going to be sharing a larger ground with another team. But this is massive, because that ground was tiny in Dartford, and they've now got a proper ground for themselves, which is going to be amazing. They've also announced that they've got a new manager, which is Jocelyn Pescher, who is ex-PSG manager. Again, massive pedigree.
Huge.
Coming in. And the one that got Sarah absolutely stumped is that...
Yeah, it sent me spinning.
The Swedish international, Asllani, is their new number 9 and officially signed on transfer opening to be their first signing under this era under Kang. And it's massive. It's absolutely massive that someone of her caliber is coming to London City Lionesses.
Kasabar Asllani has, I'm going to do this quick math, I think over 200 international caps for Sweden. I mean, this is a star. This is an absolute star. And what division do the London City Lionesses play in?
They're in the championship. So they're in
the championship. They're in Division 2. She's chosen to go to a Division 2 side. Like, this doesn't happen. This does not happen. And if you are me or somebody like me, you see this and you think, why would somebody of that caliber choose to do that? And I think if you follow men's football, your first answer is money. And I think maybe if you follow women's football, that was your answer too, because it doesn't make sense. But then when you look at this as a complete picture, it starts to make sense. Michelle Kang is building something here, and she has sold everybody on what that larger picture is, to bring in that manager that she brought in, to bring in this signing that she brought in. She is saying to everybody with these two statements that these two people believe in this vision, and why don't you come on board? It is just outstanding. I'm almost at a loss for words, and I'll add on to that too, that I think when a lot of teams decide to make that leap and say, hey, we're going to go for it. We talk about this a lot when it comes to teams that are fresh to the WSL who just got promoted from the championship. They usually go one of two ways. And some of them keep everybody around and say, this is the team that won. Let's add a couple threats and we'll go from there. And some scrap the whole squad and bring on new players. And I don't think that usually goes well. I'm more of a fan of keeping the core of what you have. And that's exactly what Michelle Kang and the London City Lionesses are doing as well. News also broke recently that Lucy Fitzgerald, the all-time appearance leader and captain of London City Lionesses, just got re-signed. And when I tell you that this made London City Lioness fans happy, I think they were just as happy about this as they were about the Asllani signing. Like, they're doing this the right way. They're keeping the core of the team. They're keeping their fan base. Just massive. And it makes me want to buy a jersey. I'm not going to lie.
I will not be buying a jersey because of their Millwall roots. I'm happy for their project. I'm happy that it's going on, but I will not be buying a jersey because it still has Millwall connotations.
Before we end, I just want to read a couple quotes. Michelle Kang, in a press conference alongside Asllani, said a few things, namely, quote, "For us to become the best female football team in England, it was very clear to us that we needed the best players, and we worked very hard to recruit the top players who would help us earn promotion, stay up, and aspire for trophies at the WSL level." That is a very clear statement to everybody about where she wants this club to go, and soon, frankly. And I'll add on, Asllani made a comment because, of course, like, this is a big signing. Asllani coming all the way to England to play in the second division. She said, quote, "When we have the right investments, how far can we go? People will call me crazy for being here when I have the opportunity to play in the biggest teams in the world. But I went with a feeling I get from Michelle about her vision for women's sport. I'm very excited to be here." It's time to start watching the championship, everybody.
I could have told you that last season, but yes.
No, I mean that mainly for our United States based, because I think it's a lot harder to access. For those of you listening who want to watch it, it's all on FA Player for us. 100% of it on FA Player, which is free. So no excuses now. Wow, that just made me really excited.
Yeah, it is. It's exciting to see that it's, it's two sides of a coin, because on some sides the investment's there and it's growing and it's working, and then on other sides, as we're seeing with Reading and Man United, they're just not, for differing reasons. And so, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but we will get there.
Yeah, well, it all comes back to the same thing that it feels like. I feel like I just beat my head against the wall saying this as many times as I say it, but it's not rocket science. If you invest, you will see the returns. It is quite literally that simple. And big shout out to Michelle Kang, who obviously knows that and puts her money where her mouth is all the time. And she's reaping the benefits of it. All right, and that is it for us here at the Women's Soccer Show.
Don't forget to check out our Patreon, where you will get early access to our Olympics coverage. We also do News in 10. We've got fits and kits, and I'm telling you now, there have been some amazing fits out there, so do check out the latest episode when that's going to drop. But also, you can just chuck us a couple of quid to keep us going. I promise you, everything goes into the creation, the production, and the following of this podcast. We do not keep a penny of it.
Amen to that. So we'll see you next week. We'll see you on Monday for Olympics episode 2 Group B preview, and we will see you next Wednesday for our final regular episode. Until after the Olympics, we'll be covering all things Kansas City versus Orlando and anything else crazy that happens in the NWSL and other. So for us here at the Women's Soccer Show, I've been Sarah.
And I've been Allie.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.